Hi, and welcome to Zen with VR. I am Supriya, the co founder of ZenFinder, and your host for today. We're doing this series in collaboration with Virtuous Retail, and today we'll be talking about how and why should you invest in your financial well being. And for that, I have with me Vikram Singhvi, who is a certified financial planner and also the co founder of Venwealth. That's a boutique wealth management company based in Bangalore. Vikram is an expert at helping people find the path to financial prosperity. Welcome, Vikram. It's great to have you here, and I think it's a very pertinent session in the scenario that we find ourselves in today. There is so much of uncertainty and stress about financial well being, whether my business will do well, whether I'll have a job or not. So, what would your advice be to manage this financial stress and, you know, anxiety?
Hi Supriya, thanks for having me as a part of this campaign. It's great to be here, and that's a fantastic first question to kick off things with. The COVID-19 pandemic is something which obviously none of us have ever experienced and not seen anything like it. So it's put us in a situation which is going to make us feel anxious, stressful, and uncertain about our futures as such. Whether you're running a small business or you're doing a job, obviously things are looking a little bleak as of now, and you don't know how they're going to pan out, right? If you're running a small business, you don't know whether once the lockdown is lifted, you're going to be able to go back to a situation where things were, say, 3 weeks ago. And if you're doing a job, you don't know whether you could get furloughed for a brief period, or you're going to have to take a lesser salary for a brief period. It could be either, and in uncertain times like this, you tend to get stressed out. But it's important not to fret over these things and start preparing yourself mentally and financially. I think more importantly, to prepare yourself mentally for a situation where you may not be able to be in a situation which is good enough, and then think about the financial implication of that. From a financial perspective, I think for a small business or whether you're doing a job, one of the important things that you're going to think about is sort of prepare an emergency budget, because your spending over the next few months has got to be different from what it was in the past, because things right now will feature more on the lines of urgent and important, and not things which are that important. So concentrate on creating an emergency budget for both your business and your personal life. Apart from that, I think one of the most important things that one can think about is creating an alternative source of income. It's not it's sometimes important to think about an alternative source of income and not depend purely on your main source of income. You could think about being a part of the gig economy, for example. Say if you've got graphic designing skills or editing skills or whatever it may be, which you think you used to do as a hobby, but you never took it to the next level. Given that you're in the kind of lockdown that you are, it might be a good idea to utilize that skill and start developing an alternative source of income, which could create a good buffer for you and not just be dependent purely on the main source of income. And finally, one of the other key things that I recommend as a financial advisor is that you always have an emergency fund. I'm sure a lot of people do already, but if you haven't, then take this away as one of the most important learnings from a situation like this, that you've got to create an emergency fund, and that emergency fund does not get dipped into except for when there is an emergency like this, which we're facing today. So it's important that you concentrate on these things. People tend to forget such basic things, but it's important that you think about these things in times like this.
Okay, amazing. That was great. My second question is about what would you recommend people do in these tough times to manage their money better? Do you have any tips for us?
That's actually a very important thing to think about, Supriya, in times like this, because people right now are very stressed out about, oh, what's going to happen, but nobody's thinking about what you need to think about in the long term. Financial well-being is something which is very important to think about from a longer term perspective, and it's in times like this that you realize whether what you've done is right or wrong, or what is it that you could have done differently. So retrospectively thinking about things may not be the right thing to do as of now. Instead of reminiscing over those old times, think about what you want to do for your future. Think about how you want to make sure that your goals are rightly placed in line with your investments and your risk profile. Obviously, every individual's risk profile is very, very different. You don't necessarily, person A is not going to have the same risk profile as person B. Your goals will define your risk profile. So make sure that you're talking to a financial advisor who will help you understand what your risk profile is, list down your goals with him, discuss with him what is it that you need to do towards achieving your goals, and be more realistic about things as such, and ensure that if you're not in a situation where you can take a risk with investment, then don't do so. But if it is in crisis situations like this that people who make sure that they're thinking about the long term end up making really decent returns. Take the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, for example. Anybody who invested through that crisis ended up being on the right side of things, and I'm pretty sure that even now, if you're doing things in the right way, you will end up being on the right side of things. Make sure that you're not making investments for the sake of making investments. Try and understand what your structure or model is by talking to a financial advisor, by understanding what your requirements are, and then accordingly do things. Because your risk profile is completely different from someone else, as I said, and your risk profile is going to change from time to time. It will change according to the situation, because your individual situation could be changing, the global economic scenario could be changing, India's economic scenario could be changing from time to time. Hence, your risk profile will change, and you don't realize it because you can't be an eternal bull or an eternal bear in the equity market. You have to take actions according to your individual requirements. You can't keep thinking about the market. You've got to more self-introspect and see what suits you and what your requirement is. Because if you keep taking decisions according to the market, then you're not going to be able to be in a prosperous situation financially. Think about your portfolio more than thinking about the Nifty or the Sensex. Think about what you need to do. If you've been working with a financial advisor all this while, go back to the drawing board right now, understand where your portfolio stands, and see what changes and tweaks you need to make because of whatever the current situation in the market is.
Thanks, Vikram. So on to my final question, and that's about what to avoid. These are tough times. People end up panicking and then making bad decisions. So any thoughts from you on what to do, what not to do when it comes to financial balance?
That's actually an important thing to think about, okay? Because everybody's talking about what to do in a situation like this, but nobody seems to be thinking about what not to do. Because it's in times like this that people end up making wrong and poor financial decisions and choices with regard to their investments and personal finance. So it's extremely important to think about what not to do. In my opinion, there are 2-3 things that one needs to watch out for. Firstly, in a time like this, credit becomes extremely cheap and easily available because interest rates tend to fall a lot. So credit is available at a very cheap rate, but don't take it up unnecessarily. If you don't need to take up that loan, then don't take it up just for the sake of taking it up and using it. In my opinion, interest rates will continue to remain low for the foreseeable future because the government will want the economy to prosper once we're out of a situation like this. Hence, they will try and keep interest rates low. So don't take up unnecessary credit if you don't need to. Secondly, if you've been someone who's been investing in equity markets for the past 3 to 5 years, then continue to do so and don't exit your existing investments, because if you're exiting your existing investments, then you're booking a loss and not giving them a chance to recover as such. Even in the last 45 days, if you've seen observed the markets carefully, while obviously it's fallen quite a lot, there have been extremely sharp up moves in the interim as well. Historically, if you look at data for the past 30 years as such, if you've missed the 10 best days of market returns in the last 30 years, then your return over that period becomes half. So what this tells us is that equity markets are very volatile in nature. They're volatile in normal times, and hence in times like this, they will get even more volatile. I understand it's difficult to see your portfolios diminish at the rate at which they have, but you've got to show some courage and patience and stay invested and stay the course during times like this. Thirdly, one of the things that the RBI has come up with is to allow banks to let you push your EMIs by 3 months. My suggestion is that if you can afford that EMI, go ahead and pay it. Don't push it, because that interest rate calculation is a little more complicated, wherein the banks are going to continue to charge you interest for these 3 months and add it back to your loan after the tenure is done. Hence, you may have to pay more than 3 EMIs at the end of the actual tenure. So if you can afford the loan, afford the EMI, go ahead and continue to pay.
Okay, that was amazing. I think, Vikram, that you've shared some very interesting tips that are definitely going to help people at least take off some of that financial stress that we've been feeling. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and thank you all for tuning in. There are not many more videos coming, so watch out, and I will see you next time. Thank you.